ahead of time what we were going to do, then that's not really free will either.
Okay, good questions. Let's say you've been dating her for the past 2 months. Let's say that every week she's said to you, I love you. Then tonight your dad calls you up and says, Justin, I've been paying her $1,000 a week to love you. How would you feel?
I would feel creeped out that she said it within the first 2 months.
Good.
What evidence can you provide? Because my mind is, I'm not going to blindly have faith in something unless I can see the evidence that it's there.
Good. You said, before I accept anything, I need evidence. Okay, I'm tracking with you. I'm just the same way you are, okay? Before I believe anything, I need evidence. But now, the question becomes, how much evidence, what kind of evidence do you need in order to believe that God exists?
I would need scientific evidence, and how much of it is really dependent on each individual person.
Okay.
I mean, you can't measure, like, for me it could be, I'm just going to use a number like, I need 100% evidence. For someone else it could be they need 80% evidence.
Okay. Okay, the reason I asked that question, Justin, is because I have no scientific evidence that love is real. It's an unseen, intangible value.
It's chemical reactions firing in our brain.
Okay, good. Then if I love you, it means I have to love you because there are chemical reactions firing in my brain, and so I have to love you. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, but my experience contradicts that, Justin. My experience is I don't have to love you. I could hate you,
Exactly.
or I could just blow you off, be apathetic.
Yeah, it's emotions. And those are chemical reactions in our brain. They know, like, they've done research to say what chemicals control what emotions and what part of the brain.
Okay? I would insist my love for you is not an emotion. Why? Because I define love the same way Jesus did, which means to make a decision of the will to pray for your well-being, to wish your well-being, and to do things that promote your well-being. You see, when Jesus says, love your enemy, he's not saying, have good feelings for your enemy. To be honest with you, Justin, I don't have good feelings towards my enemy. But I obey Jesus and love my enemy by actively wishing their well-being. So you see, love, I would argue, is not just an emotion. Yes, there's an emotion we call love, but when Christ says to love, he's not talking about having all these positive feelings. Because guess what? I can't command my feelings. And if someone has hurt me deeply enough, I don't have a lot of positive feelings towards them. But I can love them, which means I can pray for their success, I can wish their success, and I can work for their success.
So our definitions of love are different.
Exactly. So I think we got to be real careful there.
Why isn't this God providing for people in poverty? That's my big thing. Like, there's so much suffering going on in this world. Why would you want to worship a God who is allowing that to happen?
Okay.
I mean, if he did all the things like the Bible said, what is keeping him from doing them now?
Okay, good question. The only reason that suffering is really bad is because you know what really good is. In other words, evil is real. It's an objective value. And good is real. It's an objective value. It's not just relative, it's not subjective, and that's why I like what you're protesting. You're protesting, come on, Cliff, how can God exist in light of all the evil and suffering in the world? But you see, if there is no God, Justin, there is no evil. There is no good, other than a subjective prejudice, a taste, a bias, an opinion. You see, the reason that evil is wrong is because it's objectively wrong, and the reason that good is because it's objectively good. It's not just subjective, depending on my opinion. It's objective, which means it's independent of you and me. You're absolutely right, sir. Suffering is wrong. Starvation is wrong. Evil is wrong. Objectively, not just subjectively. And the only reason that's true is because there's a God who has created and defined a value of goodness and justice and compassion. And those are real. They're not just a biochemical reaction.
Then why would he make evil?
Okay.
If it's all part of his plan, why would he include suffering and everything in his plan? And
Good
you say
question.
if there's free will, which I'm pretty sure is what you're going to go towards,
Yes.
then why create a divine plan then if you're going to give us free will? But if there is a divine plan and he knew ahead of time what we were going to do, then that's not really free will either.
Okay, good questions. Let's say you've been dating her for the past 2 months. Let's say that every week she's said to you, I love you. Then tonight your dad calls you up and says, Justin, I've been paying her $1,000 a week to love you. How would you feel?
I would feel creeped out that she said it within the first 2 months.
Good. You'd be bummed out, wouldn't you? You'd be bummed out because you'd realize her love was not a free decision. Her love was paid for by my dad. See, in order to be real, love has to be free. If it's paid for, if it's coerced or forced, it's not real. It's not really love. Right?
Well, I just said you could pay me to go around preaching that God is real, and I don't believe in it. It's the same thing.
Good point. If I'm out here simply to make money, how sad, how tragic. I hope you would have a problem with that.
I would have a huge problem with that.
Good. But remember, if everything's relative, if everything's subjective, it really doesn't matter whether I'm out here because people are paying me lots of money. Because it's all just a matter of opinion.
It does matter because we need to progress as a human race. And if you were out here just doing that and you didn't believe in what you were saying and you were just doing it for greed, you're hindering the progression of the human race.
I'm not hindering anybody. I'm making money for my family and myself. So if I'm out here motivated by a bunch of people paying me millions of dollars, come on, you know very well that that's good for me because I'm getting a lot of money. Something wrong with that? Yes, there is your point, and I agree with you, Justin. Why? Because if my motive out here is to communicate Christ and God, and it's not motivated by love for you, instead it's motivated by the fact that someone's paying me a lot of money, how trite and superficial is that? You see, Justin, what you and I are beginning to see is motives do matter, goodness is not relative, and if I stand here saying, well, it's just fine, the reason I tell you about Christ is because someone's paying me millions of dollars to do it. It's kind of sad, isn't it? You see, objective good is real, Justin, isn't it? And you would not accept me standing here talking to you about Christ if the truth was that someone's paying me millions of dollars to do it.
Okay, but how does this relate to the question I asked about a divine plan, why suffering's allowed? It seems like you're skirting around that.
Okay, here's why I'm not skirting around it. Because if there is no God, suffering happens.
But if there is a God, why would he allow that? That's my question.
Okay, right. But you see, what you've got to acknowledge first is the very fact that you're so indignant about suffering points you to God's existence. Sure it does. It's very simple. See, and this is what you got to grasp. And we got to, you know, I'll try so long and then I'll go on. But if there is no God, objective morality does not exist. Why? Because if there is no God, there's no mind prior to the human mind that defines right and wrong. In other words, who defines right and wrong? The human mind. Exactly, we do, if there is no God. So you might say it's naughty for you, Cliff, to preach Christ out here, motivated by someone paying you millions of dollars. But that's just your opinion. My opinion is it's a great way to provide for my family and me. You might say that date rape is wrong. But if I say I have a very high testosterone level and I've got a raper, then I'm right for myself. You see the relativism.
No, because that causes harm to someone else.
So what? According to you. According to me, it brings me a great deal of pleasure, so therefore date rape is fine. Because it's all relative.
We have a collective sense of morals.
Great, collective, right?
They're ever changing.
Yeah.
Which is why a lot of the things in the Bible we no longer practice today because our morals are ever changing depending on society's values. I mean, I can't find someone out here who's a virgin and rape her and pay her dad 50 silver and have her be my wife anymore. That's not acceptable.
That's not the issue right now. We're not talking about the Bible. The Bible's not part of our discussion right now. The discussion is,
I'm just saying,
suffering is evil. Really? What do you mean evil? Well, from your perspective, it might be evil. From my perspective, it might be good. And if you're going to be consistent with your worldview, you're going to have to say, Cliff, you're right. From your perspective, it's right. From my perspective, it's wrong. But what is right and wrong? It's totally relative, totally subjective, just a taste. Like, do you prefer beans or broccoli? Do you prefer Coke or Pepsi? It's a taste. And so do you prefer date rape or not date rape? It's a taste. Do you prefer abusing innocent children or not? Just a taste.
But with one of those, you're causing harm to another human being. With Coke and Pepsi,
So what?
I can recognize that's a preference.
So what if you're causing harm to an accidental collection of atoms? You step on grass and kill grass, so why not step on a human being and kill a human being? Why not?
Because it's in our nature to progress as a species.
Great, Justin, that's wonderful. Maybe it's in your nature, it's in my nature to step on people. Are you going to tell me I'm wrong?
Based off society's values, yeah.
Oh, really? What happens if you live in Nazi society? What happens if you live in white South African society? What if you live in the time of the Dred Scott decision in the United States? What do you do then, Justin?
Those are those society's values. Like I said, they're ever changing.
Fine. Then morality's relative. It changes based on society changing. Which means if society says that black folks are 3/5 the value of white folks, then that's true. Baloney, Justin, you know better than that. You know that even if society says black people are inferior to white people, that society is wrong. That's what Dr. Martin Luther King understood. Just because society says something doesn't make it right. That's what Gandhi understood. Just because my society says that the caste system is right doesn't make it right.
And a lot of times, religion is to blame for those.
No, that's a different issue, Justin. Come on, don't get out of the kitchen.
I'm
Stay in the kitchen.
I'm right at the stove.
No, you're not at the stove. Not when you talk about then religion.
I'm starting to
We're talking about a philosophical issue that has nothing to do with Jesus Christ or the Bible.
I said religion. I didn't say Jesus Christ.
It has everything to do with, is there a God or is there no God? If there's no God, Justin, then you define right and wrong, the culture defines right and wrong, the power elite define right and wrong. And right and wrong are totally relative depending upon the individual, depending upon the culture, or depending upon the people in power. King Arthur and his knights, or Adolf Hitler and his henchmen.
Exactly. That's what I said.
Okay, then why are you so upset as if it's an objective moral that suffering exists? Just realize that's your own bias. It's just your opinion. But you can't live that way, Justin, and I'm glad you can't live that way. You live your life as if evil and suffering are real and they're really wrong. Well, the only way that can be true is if there is some type of God to create and define justice, good versus evil, as objective values.
And why is he not stopping it? That's what I've been asking you the whole time.
That's the next question. We'll get to that, I promise. But do you see the first point now or not?
I see your point of view of it.
Okay, then don't take it from me. Read Friedrich Nietzsche, Albert Camus, Jean-Paul Sartre, the great French and German atheistic existentialist and nihilist philosophers. It's crystal clear.
And then I'll give you some reading material. I want you to read Dawkins, Hawking.
Yeah, I do.
Hitchens.
I do. And guess what? Hitchens, Dawkins, Hawking, they have no basis for an objective moral. And they wouldn't be so crazy as to claim that they do. They know very well that because there is no God, morality is relative. It's subjective.
That's what I said. We define
Okay.
our own morality.
Which means there's nothing absolutely wrong about evil. It just happens. There's nothing wrong with me going up and killing this guy, murdering him. It just happens. Now, maybe you say it's evil, I say it's good. No one's right, no one's wrong. It's totally relative because there is no God. It's that simple. All right, second point. If there is no God, what's the solution for suffering? You die and rot. You go to the fertilizer pit. Cancer ruins you. Heart failure destroys your life. Yeah, you die and go to the fertilizer pit. So there's no solution ultimately to suffering if there is no God. Jesus Christ insisted there is a solution for suffering. Forgiveness and eternal life in a heaven, well, there will be no more suffering. no more evil, no more death. Wow. If that's true, that's the best news on the planet.
It sounds great, but
Good, then you better check it out.
Okay, why don't I get your response on the problem of evil?
Yes, sir.
Now, many people say, okay, there's so much evil in the world, how could there be a God? But there's a good explanation to that, and that's free will, right? That people can use their free will to do good or bad, right? And so, if there's bad in the world, we shouldn't blame God, we blame the people that committed it, right? Okay, so I understand that argument, but people are not the only source of evil.
Great point.
There's natural disasters, disease, hurricanes, so forth.
Yep.
Why couldn't God have created a universe free of disease, free of natural disaster, such that the only evil comes from humans?
Great question, very difficult question. Ultimately, sir, I do not know why God allowed evil. Jesus never directly addressed the question. Philosophers and theologians for thousands of years have not come up with an ultimate answer. So it's obviously intellectually naive of me to think that I could absolutely answer that. I can't. But what I do know is the main point of the book of Job in the Old Testament is life is unfair. God is fair. Don't get the two mixed up. Why is life unfair? Not because God created it unfair, but because God chose to limit his power by giving us a free will, as you pointed out. There are consequences to my free decisions. Because God takes my free will seriously, there are consequences. One of those consequences is when I tell God, get lost. When Adam and Eve told God, get lost, he took a step back from planet Earth. Disease, chaos, unfairness, destruction, and death, genetic breakdown, entered the gap. So we're born into a cursed world. We're not born into the Garden of Eden.
Why would he allow that? Why not create a world free of disaster, free of disease? I mean, because there's plenty of evil generated by humans. Why these additional sources of evil? Why couldn't he create a better universe for us? He is all-powerful, all-knowing, right? He can figure it out.
Yep. Because he respects our free will.
Free will doesn't have anything to do with disasters.
God respects us.
Free will has nothing to do with disasters and disease.
Okay.
I understand the free will argument. I'm talking about evil generated by disease and disasters, not free will.
Let me go over it one more time with you. I'll try and communicate it more clearly. Genesis chapter 3 records that when human beings flipped God off, he honored their request to step out, step back, remove yourself. As a result of God stepping back, chaos, genetic breakdown, disease, nature is cursed. That's part of the fall. Just read Genesis 3. Nature is cursed. Women have babies with pain.
So why
Two people disobey
take this
God
step
and
back?
he punishes
Why take
millions
this
of
step back?
generations.
No. To be honest with you, it's just not Adam and Eve who rebelled against God. I did.
But you said
You did.
that caused the
Why
nature-
does he
the
take this
curse of
step back
nature.
and allow disease to come about?
Because he respects free will.
That disease doesn't have anything to do with free will.
It's a consequence of us telling God, step out. Because he respects our free will, he steps back. And the consequence is horrendous.
I mean, free will can allow people to do bad things. Me hit this guy, kill this guy.
Yeah.
But me having free will doesn't cause him to get sick.
That's correct.
Okay?
Right. But you see, sir, when I strike that guy or murder him, not only am I sinning against him, I'm sinning against God. And I'm saying, God, when you made him, lousy job, and I want you out of the picture, God, I'm going to live my life my way, and I'm going to murder him. When I tell God to step out of the picture, he honors that request, steps back, and chaos erupts.
So, disease and disaster are God's punishment for us doing bad things?
Disease and disasters are part of the consequences of God honoring our request, take a hike, get out. He partially, not totally obviously, because he's still involved, but he partially takes a step back, and the consequence is chaos, genetic breakdown, death. The Bible's real clear. The wages of sin is death. But that just doesn't mean if I murder, I'm going to die. No. If I hate, I rebelled against God. I told God to vacate the premises. I'm going to hate you instead of love you the way God created me to love you. And God honors that request, but part of the consequence is everything breaks down. Everything.
I think that your words are lost on a lot of people on this campus, and that the best way anyone can demonstrate their devotion to Christ is through actions. Life is too short, and actions are the only thing that really matter.
Great point.
Do you think you could be doing more good than public speaking?
Oh, no question about it. I'm a husband, and I can promise you the quality of my marriage has more to do with my actions, as you pointed out, than my words. I'm a father. I can promise you that you're absolutely right. The majority of good that I do in raising my sons is my actions, not my words. I'm a pastor of a church. I can promise you, sir, I do far more good by visiting the sick, raising money to feed the hungry and clothe the naked. So yes, that's crucially important.
Right.
But, you see, what God communicates is, I've given you rational minds. You're supposed to use those rational minds in order to understand reality. And that is why communication is so crucial, verbal communication.
Thank you. Can I add to that real quick?
Yeah.
A lot of the things you said on Wednesday and today, I think are just really disparaging to atheists, insulting even. And I really, do you think Christ would go to universities and insult atheists?
Okay. How have I insulted any atheist?
On Wednesday, you called the belief in the evolution of the human body, you said people were gullible for believing that this design could not have come from an intelligent creator. You called us gullible. I took that personally. I'm sure I'm not the only one.
Right, sure, I can understand. When a professor marks an answer that you give on an exam as wrong, is that disparaging?
No.
Okay, why not?
Because that's a very objective. That's an objective test of answers. What you're doing out here, I get the impression that you're applying rationality to faith-based questions.
Right.
Faith exists because we can't answer everything. That is why faith exists.
Okay, we disagree.
Why?
I don't have faith because I'm missing facts.
Why does faith exist?
Sir, faith exists because it's the only way to have a relationship. Every relationship that you have with a fellow human being is based on faith or trust. Every time you take medicine from a pharmacist without chemically analyzing it, that's faith.
Yeah.
The fact that you've given as much money and you're working as hard at Texas State for a diploma is definite faith. You can't prove that Texas State is going to give you a diploma on your day of graduation. Sir, we are so dependent on others in this life, on the laws of nature. It's incredible. That's reality. You have faith. All of us have faith.
But the fact that we have to have faith in our relationships is because we can't test everything. We can't test every aspect of relationship.
Good. There's very little that we can test.
That which cannot be tested cannot be known. That which cannot be known wants faith. That's
like it or not.
So faith exists.
You're going to have faith if you're going to live in this world.
Faith exists because we can't know everything.
Right.
Faith exists because we can't answer everything.
Right. In fact, sir, we can't prove anything. To prove means to show it cannot be another way.
Thank you, Cliff.
But that doesn't mean I'm paralyzed. That doesn't mean I can't have knowledge. Knowledge does not demand proof. Knowledge demands evidence of reliability.
Is evidence different from proof?
Yeah.
This is another thing that really bugged me about your speech on Wednesday.
All right.
If you have evidence for God, then why can you not prove God?
Because to prove means to show that it cannot be another way. I cannot prove that God exists. I cannot prove that you exist.
But
I cannot prove that I exist.
then what does the evidence of God attest to? What does that do exactly?
Well, evidence of God's existence shows me that it's very wise to believe in God, and it's very unwise to be an atheist. Because the evidence is that God exists. Not the proof, but the evidence.
Okay,
So-
I have a good example here.
Yep.
All right, the evidence, and this is arguable, but I think a lot of us agree that democracy, probably the best government humans have ever come up with on the face of the earth. And that's arguable again, but that's a pretty popular opinion in the West here. And so, philosophically, you can say that and still not think that it's the best possible system to exist, right?
Right.
So if there's evidence for God, and it's the only evidence, you don't see any other evidence for any other gods, can you verify that he was the first God? Can you say that there aren't other gods that aren't in the picture whose evidence they haven't left behind? Why does the best evidence necessitate that it's the truth? Which is what you're here for, to convince us of that truth. God's existence, Jesus' existence.
I am convinced that the evidence points to God's existence. That is why putting your faith in God, trusting God, is such a wise decision. Obviously, the only reason you're paying as much money as you are and working as hard as you are at Texas State University is because the evidence is this is a reliable institution of higher learning. Obviously, the only reason when you have a green light on a traffic light that you don't stop to make sure that those other cars stop at the red light is because you have evidence that the state of Texas does not grant licenses to people who run red lights.
That's not true.
So you stop at every green light to make sure those other cars are going to stop?
I tend to slow down a bit and take a good look, that's for sure.
Okay, good. Because you know that human beings can make mistakes.
I know that faith isn't
You know that
flawless.
people get drunk and get irresponsible behind the wheel of a car. Good. See, but your decisions are based on evidence. You don't just blindly believe. If you blindly believe, you're gullible. And that's exactly why, sir, I said an atheist, someone who has concluded there is no God, is being gullible.
Careful now.
No,
That's exactly the disparaging speech that I don't appreciate.
well, I don't understand why you don't appreciate it.
I relate to a ton of atheists, and I don't think one of them is gullible.
Sir, every single one of us at times has been gullible.
Do you agree that Christians are gullible also?
Absolutely. Every human being's gullible at times. But atheism, as I look at it, is clearly an example of incredible gullibility. Why? I explained it. An atheist is someone who believes that life comes from non-life. I'm sorry. I see plant life come from plant life. I never see plant life come from non-life. I see animal life come from animal life. I never see animal life come from non-life. I see human life come from human life. I never see human life come from non-life. So I'm sorry. Because of my observation that life comes from life never comes from non-life, and in light of the fact that an atheist is someone who believes life comes from non-life, I find that to be incredibly gullible.
Christians believe that because it was a book written by humans just the same with the same flaws that you speak of as us, and that's supposed to be concrete. It's like we believe in something that we can see, that we can look up on the internet, and we believe in nothing. I mean,
All right.
a book.
Okay. All right, now, obviously you're new to this crowd.
Yeah.
For 3 days now,
Yeah,
I've been
I'm
asked,
taking it back.
why do you believe God exists, Cliff? Never once have I said, I believe God exists because the Bible tells me so. Never once.
So just intelligent design. I guess.
Intelligent design, objective morals, everything that has a beginning has a cause. The universe has a beginning, therefore the universe has a cause. DNA, densely packed information in a single cell, more densely packed information in the DNA of a single cell than in 3 sets of the 30-volume Encyclopedia Britannica. If you and I are going walking up and down the beach, we see ripples in the sand, and you say, hey, Cliff, how did those ripples get there? And if I say to you, well, obviously the waves did that. Cool. We keep walking. We see in the sand, John loves Mary. You say, hey, Cliff, how'd that get there? Oh, simple, the waves. No, irrational. Why? Because so much densely packed information demands an intelligent mind. The DNA of a single cell has more densely packed information than 3 sets of the 30-volume Encyclopedia Britannica.
How do you explain statistical anomalies? Every system has anomalies.
Rats
I
have
don't-
that much DNA.
I don't doubt that a word could be written on the sand by a rock passing by from a drifting current of water.
John Loves Mary can be written by a rock tossed around by the...
I firmly
Wave?
believe that it is remotely possible.
Okay. But that is so remote as to be impossible. I mean, statistically, if you try and statistically
impossible.
figure out what's the possibility of a rock rolling in a wave, writing in the sand, John Loves Mary, it's statistically impossible.
But does that make it wrong?
Yeah.
Does that make it impossible?
It's gullible. Here we go. I'm going to use the same word. It is gullible to believe that a rock rolling in a wave can write in the sand, John Loves Mary. It's incredibly gullible.
What evidence do we have that Jesus rose from the dead? You can't tell me there's archaeological evidence for that.
No, the archaeological evidence is that the New Testament is historically reliable. Now, you read the historically reliable document.
That's just a claim, though.
The evidence points to the Gospels being
There are hundreds of
reliable.
thousands of people who disagree with you vehemently.
Yeah, but
So what?
how much is it
So-
possible?
So what if people disagree with
Why are
you?
the authority
That
of
doesn't
what the
change
evidence
truth.
says to us?
Truth is not determined by a vote. If we all vote to suspend the law of gravity, is that going to suspend the law of gravity? No.
Listen, Cliff, the evidence speaks differently to everyone.
Fine. And if you violate the law of gravity, you will suffer the consequences even if you voted to suspend the law of gravity.
You can't analogize gravity to historical evidence.
You can
Your
always
analogies.
president. I mean, that's
You obviously don't enjoy analogies. I'm sorry. It's one of the simplest ways to communicate. It's one of the clearest ways to communicate is analogy. Jesus talked in
It
parables.
is the most subjective way to communicate.
Okay, good. You really believe that?
Absolutely.
Good. What are you living for and why? I'm waiting. What are you living for and why?
I want to touch other people's hearts and just bring joy, see the light in their faces.
Good. Is that subjective? Is that subjective?
Yeah, totally.
Then don't give me the nonsense that you base your life on
was also
specific,
sarcastic.
provable,
Come on.
scientific garbage.
Come on, Cliff.
You are being intellectually hypocritical and you know it. You know it, sir. I just caught you right in it.
Tell me about
And you're
being
smart enough to see it. You insisted that before someone has faith, there's got to be hard, scientific, physical evidence. And then I turn it, flip it on you, and ask you what's the evidence for what you're living for is true, and you jump into such a subjective pool of emotion and feeling, it's incredible.
Everybody heard my sarcasm. Please.
And I hope everybody followed the thinking here, because it's crystal clear. You have a double standard, sir, which is intellectual hypocrisy.
You have a double standard.
No, I do not. I am being as consistent as
Jesus wouldn't
Can
be
be.
here degrading people like me. He would.
I am not degrading you.
You are
I am
degrading me.
strongly.
I'm the one who decides if you're degrading me.
Oh, no, you don't. I can disagree with you, and that's not degrading you. And I respect you as a human being, but I disagree with your thinking.
He still believes that he is correct. I mean, what's to say that if we're saying that everything's subjective and he like fully believes that he's correct? I said, where does that leave him if everything comes down to what you believe in?
Okay, but you see, my point is, I don't care what he believes.
Right.
Objectively, date rape is wrong. Not because I say it's wrong, not because of some social contract, because the government says it's wrong. Date rape is wrong because we human beings are not glorified monkeys. We're human beings created in the likeness of God. We all have innate value, which is why God demands that we respect each other and love each other. And guess what? That's not relative. That's not subjective. That is reality. See what I'm saying? No, think what I'm saying. I'm saying that there is sense experience plus moral experience. What's sense experience? You and I walk to the top of the building. We jump. You say, I'm going to fly, Cliff. Baloney. We both are going to hit the ground equally hard, equally fast. So our sense experience is gravity is real. When we jump off the top of a building, we're not going to fly. We're going to drop. That's reality. In the same way that we have sense experience, we have moral experience. And our moral experience is that if her roommate is date raped, Our conscience convicts us. That is wrong. Not subjectively wrong. That is absolutely objectively wrong. I have my sense experience that ties me into reality. I have my moral experience that ties me into reality. Now, do I have a free will? Yes, I do. Well, then what does that look like? That looks like if I want to date rape her roommate badly enough, I can rationalize it. Doesn't make me right. But because I have a free will, I can rationalize date rape by saying, like a student at the University of Arizona told me a few years ago, well, date rape is right because I have a very high testosterone level. And my girlfriend really did want to have sex with me. Although she said no, she really meant yes. And I had to look that guy in the face and say, sir, you are objectively wrong. If you date rape, that is evil. Not because I say so, not because the social contract says so, but because God created that woman with value, innate value. God created you to respect her, and by date raping her, that was highly disrespectful, that was evil. Make sense?
It does.
Ma'am, does that make sense? Thank you. See, that is one of my strongest pieces of evidence that God exists. It's the moral argument, the objective morals that we all experience. Watch. Well, I'll give you another quick example. Let's say this guy steals my wallet. If he steals my wallet, I'm not going to look him in the face and say, well, from my perspective, that was wrong. But I understand your perspective was right. I'm not going to do that. Instead, I'm going to look him in the face and I'm going to use one of two words. You should not have stolen my wallet. Or secondly, you ought not to have stolen my wallet. When I use those words, should and ought, I'm appealing to a standard outside of him and me, and I'm saying, come on, buddy, wake up and smell the coffee. When you stole my wallet, that was wrong. You should not have stolen it. You see, if there is no God, there is no such thing as should or ought. Make sense? Thanks, sir, so much for raising that. Thanks.